Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video we got another news and rumor review to discuss. In today's video we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some injury updates, some waiver updates, a tiny trade to discuss, plus we got some trade rumors involving the Wild, Stars, Flames, and Islanders. And we'll go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey Channel. Before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. Would never be able to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so you can also see this video. So before we begin this video, I just want to do a quick channel update. We talked about a little while ago about how I got the Senators, the Panthers, and the Canucks flags. Well, I've recently gotten a couple of more, so I just want to show you guys. So at this current point in time, I've also now gotten the Minnesota Wild now, and the Anaheim Ducks. So I now have both the Anaheim Ducks and the Minnesota Wild's flags. So I've got the Ducks, that's fantastic. So if we talk about some Duck stuff, I'll put a Ducks flag back up there. And now that I have Minnesota, the North Stars are going to be mainly used for the Dallas Stars until I get a Dallas Stars flag. So remember, if I have a Minnesota North Stars up there, they're just for Dallas now, as I now have the Minnesota Wild. So just want to recap there that I got a couple more flags. There might be one or two more coming in the not too distant future, but just wanted to let you guys know that I now have the Minnesota Wild and the Anaheim Ducks flags. So we're getting a lot more flags, but it's still missing a couple of teams. So that's just the only channel that I want to talk about here today. Going back to the regularly scheduled part of the video. So in today's video, we would usually start off by discussing some signings from our past couple of days, but unfortunately there has not been any signings from our past days. So we'll start off as we usually do by also talking about some injury updates. There haven't been too many injury updates from our past couple of days, but a couple of interesting ones. Carolina Hurricanes goaltender Frederik Andersen, who has been out for months now with a knee injury, has finally placed an injury reserve. So not too surprising that he'll be able to be activated whenever he's healthy. It's just to give them some more roster flexibility. So interesting note there, but Carolina has now put Frederik Andersen on injury reserve. Montreal's Emil Hyman was hit by a car before Thursday's game and suffered an upper body injury. It's going to keep him out at least the next 3 to 4 weeks. So Hyman's probably not going to be back until at some point in February. So it's a bad blow there for the Canadians, and hopefully Hyman will recover fast from the accident that he was hit by a car. So interesting note there. Marcus Stelic, who has missed a game with upper body injury, was placed in injury reserve. So it's a bad blow there for the Bruins. Well, Charlie McAvoy, who has been dealing with a nagging injury, was also placed in injury reserve. So the Bruins have now lost a solid top 4 defenseman, their best defenseman on that blue line, and their 4th line center for the foreseeable future. So it's a bad blow there for the Bruins to lose Kostelich and McAvoy for at least the next week. So it's a bad blow there for Boston. Vancouver's Philip Hronek, who has been out since November 27th with a lower body injury, was actually off of a long-term injury reserve and got back in the game action on Thursday. So that's really great news there for the Canucks to get Hronek back. He's a solid top 4 right shot defenseman. Might take him a couple of games to get back up to speed given how much time he's missed, but this is a really important and really great pickup there for the Canucks to get Hronek back in the lineup. So really good stuff there. Utah's Dylan Guenther, who has been out for a week now with an injury that's going to keep him out for an indefinite period of time, was placed in injury reserve. So just like Anderson, not too surprised there. Gives him some roster flexibility, and he should be able to be activated as soon as he's healthy. So interesting note there. Well, John Marino, who had missed the entirety of the season with a lower body injury, was activated off of injury reserve and got back into game action on Thursday. So it's really great news there for Utah to see Marino get back into the lineup. It's a really big boost there to their decor. It was an off-season acquisition, and to see him get back into the lineup is really good stuff there for Utah. Chris Kreider, who had missed 4 games with upper body injury, was activated off injury reserve and got back into game action on Thursday. Same thing with Evgeny Malkin in Pittsburgh. He has missed 4 games with upper body injury and was activated off injury reserve and got back into game action on Thursday. So for the Rangers and Penguins, getting solid top 6 forwards in Kreider and Malkin respectively back into their lineups, it's absolutely outstanding news, and it's really great news to see both Kreider and Malkin get back and be healthy. So interesting note there. Mason Marchment will be out a few more weeks as he still recovers from a surgery he had a couple of weeks ago. So the Stars are still going to be without one of their top end forwards for the next little while. So bad blow there for the Stars, but Marchment should hopefully be back at some point before February. And then Tyler Seguin may miss 5 to 6 more months as he recovers from hip surgery. So it's very likely that Seguin's going to miss the rest of the regular season, if not a lot of time in the playoffs too. So a bad blow there for the Stars to see Seguin still be out for quite some time. But Mason Marchment should be back in the next couple of weeks for the Stars. So interesting note there. Los Angeles' Drew Doughty could start practicing in a non-contact jersey at some point next week. So that could be a really big boost there for the Kings to see Doughty get back into the lineup in the not distant future. So really great stuff there, and hopefully he starts practicing at some point in the next week or two. Well, Alex Laferriere has suffered an upper body injury and missed Thursday's game for the LA Kings. So that's a bad blow there for the Kings to see Laferriere miss Thursday's game due to an injury. So bad stuff there for Los Angeles. When it comes to Vancouver, we have one more thing to talk about for them as Joshua started to skate, but it's still week to week with a leg injury. So great news to see him starting to skate. That's a really good step in the recovery process. But it's bad news to see that Joshua is still going to be out probably a couple more weeks with his current leg injury. So a bad blow there for the Canucks. But those are all injury updates from our past couple of days. Good to see guys like Malkin, Kreider, Marino, and Hronek all get back in game action. Hopefully they don't look too rusty in their returns. But bad news to see guys like McAvoy, Seguin, Laferriere, and Joshua all still be out. And hopefully they won't be out for an overly long period of time. But some interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, we're going over to a quick waiver update. We only saw a couple of players be placed on waivers over the past couple of days. So back over on Wednesday, we saw Tristan Jarry be placed on waivers by the Pittsburgh Penguins, as well as John Ludvig from Colorado. Now, Ludvig was recently acquired via the waiver wire a couple of months ago. I think it was back at the start of training camp from Pittsburgh. So I thought there might have been a chance Ludvig could be reclaimed by Pittsburgh. On top of that, he's more of an AHLer at this point in time. So if the Penguins weren't going to reclaim him, I thought there was a likely chance he would clear. When it comes to Tristan Jarry, he's an interesting name to be placed on the waiver wire because he's a starting level goaltender for the Penguins, but he's not been playing overly well over the past couple of weeks, and the Penguins want to sort of roll with Nedeljkovic and Blomqvist for the time being. So with his cap, I think he's got like 3 or 4 more years left at over $5 million. I didn't think anyone was going to claim him, and both these guys did wind up clearing back over on Thursday. So interesting note there, Jarry getting cleared is not too surprising. Like I said, with his cap and the way he's playing right now, I don't think any team would be willing to acquire him for nothing. And when it comes to Ludvig, he's more of an AHLer at this point anyway, so I wasn't overly surprised he wound up clearing. But those are only 2 waiver updates from the past couple of days. A little bit surprising that Jarry was placed on waivers, but not too surprising he wound up clearing. And John Ludvig was placed on waivers by Colorado, and he also cleared. So some interesting waiver updates from our past couple of days. But Ludvig and Jarry were both placed on waivers, and Ludvig and Jarry both cleared waivers. So interesting note there. Going over to a small trade we saw back over on, it was either Wednesday or Thursday. It was an interesting deal. It was a 1-for-1 swap. It was a smaller trade, and the trade was as follows. The Chicago Blackhawks acquired Dmitry Kuzmin from the Winnipeg Jets in exchange for defenseman Isaak Philips. So it's a defenseman swap here, Kuzmin for Philips. So for the Blackhawks side, Philips had gone into a couple of NHL games, had a 1 goal in 3 games played this year. Has been solid, a call-up option over the past couple of years, but I guess the Hawks didn't really see a long-term fit. Saw an opportunity to get someone who's a little bit younger, so they take Kuzmin. Kuzmin's in the second year of his 3-year ELC with an AAV of $695,000. He has no current NHL experience. He played in 18 games last year at the AHL level, putting up a goal and 3 points. So far this year, has 21 games played at the AHL level, putting up a goal and 4 points. So maybe eventually he could be a solid third pair defenseman for the Blackhawks. He's still on the younger side, I think, so it's quite possible. He's also could be a solid call-up option if the Hawks run into a couple of injuries. So it's a pretty decent pickup there. Like I say, he's only 21 years old, so it's a pretty decent pickup there for the Hawks to get Kuzmin, and I think he should be a really good fit there, even if he's just as a spare for the Blackhawks. That's a pretty good pickup there. Well, for the Jets, they get the older Isaak Philips. Philips is currently on a 1-year contract with the AAV of $655,000. Philips this year played in 3 games at the NHL level, putting up a goal. Also has a goal and 8 points in 28 AHL games this year. Last year had 6 assists in 33 NHL games with the Hawks, and also had 4 goals and 14 points in 29 games at the AHL level. So he's a very productive player at both the NHL level and the AHL level. He also has no points in 1 game so far with Manitoba, so this is a pretty good pickup there for the Jets. He should still be at the AHL level for the next little while, but could easily be a call-up option if there are just some injuries, and I think long-term he could easily be a solid third pair defenseman for the Jets. So an interesting pickup there, an interesting swap, but call-up option. Isaak Philips was dealt from the Blackhawks to the Winnipeg Jets, and in exchange, young prospect Dmitry Kuzmin has been dealt to Chicago Blackhawks. So it's an interesting swap. At this point, I think the Jets do win the deal because Philips does have more experience and is more established at this point, but I think in the long run, Kuzmin might be able to help the Blackhawks win this sort of a deal. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's a small trade I want to discuss here today. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we're going to start over here with the Calgary Flames. On the recent insider trading video back over on Tuesday, Pierre LeBrun was talking about the Calgary Flames, and he says that at this current point in time, the Flames have absolutely no interest in moving on from defenseman Rasmus Andersson. Now, I don't think that's too much of a surprise. Rasmus Andersson's been a very fantastic Calgary Flame player for the past couple of years, and this year he's been no exception. He's had a fantastic year this year, been probably their top defenseman, easily one of their top players that they've had this year, and is still on the younger side of things. So as much as there's been a lot of speculation, started last year, I think it was in the offseason or right around last year's trade deadline, that he could be traded because the Flames are sort of entering a rebuild phase, and now he's sort of on the younger side of things, and with him still being signed for this year, plus next year, there was a lot of speculation that if the Flames would remove him with his value so high, they could get a massive return that could help fuel the rebuild, but apparently the Flames Flames sort of really want to keep Andersson, sort of view him as like a really good veteran leader. The Flames are competing for a playoff spot, so maybe they don't need to rebuild. I still think they do, but we'll have to wait and see. But they apparently also, according to Pierre LeBrun, have major interest in extending Andersson when he's eligible to on July 1st this year. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. Like I said, Andersson's a very fantastic top pair right shot defenseman, which is probably why there was a lot of teams calling the Flames, checking out on the availability of Andersson. But according to LeBrun, they have no interest in dealing him. They want to stay a member of the Flames, very likely for a long period of time, which is why they have interest in signing him as an extension on July 1st. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there, but don't expect Rasmus Andersson to get moved by this year's trade deadline, and expect him to probably wind up staying in Calgary beyond this year, so very likely chance that happens. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but Flames are very high on Andersson and have no intentions of moving him at this point in time. Next one, we went to the Dallas Stars. Also on that insider trading video, Pierre LeBrun was talking about the Dallas Stars and said that the Stars may spend big time at this year's trade deadline. There's a very likely chance the Stars might make a ton of moves. Now, Pierre LeBrun said that they would be looking at a top 6 forward and a top 4 defense. Now, at this point in time, Tyler Seguin's on injury reserve. He's not on long-term injury reserve, so that allows the Dallas Stars to accrue some more cap space. But Pierre LeBrun says that they plan on moving Seguin to long-term injury reserve. There's a very likely chance he's done for the year, maybe even for some of the playoffs, so he can be on long-term injury reserve. They can use that cap space, and they can go out and spend big time, because Seguin has $9.5 million cap that you put down long-term injury reserve. They're going to be able to spend a whole bunch of money. So they still have a couple of really good prospects. They have some really good draft capital. This team could be big spenders and could make some impressive improvements to that team before the trade deadline. So expect them to go after a top 6 forward, potentially a center. Like we said, Seguin might be out for longer than the regular season, even in the playoffs too. So they're probably going to be trying to find a second line center who can work and fill in Seguin's role. We know they don't have the greatest of decors too, so like LeBrun said, they might target a top 4 defenseman too. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But the Stars are going to be big spenders. They're looking for a top 6 center. They're looking for a top 4 defenseman. Very likely chance they might try and add some depth pieces around there too to sort of finish out their roster. But with Seguin's cap hit potentially being moved to long-term injury reserve, that'll give them a lot of cap flexibility. And given the fact they still have some decent prospects, some decent picks, they could be a really big team to watch come this year's trade deadline, given how much money they'll have to spend. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but watch out for the Dallas Stars. With Seguin's cap going on long-term injury reserve, very likely chance to go after some of the bigger type players in this year's trade deadline. I think that's a very likely scenario, given Seguin's injury, given his placement on potential long-term injury reserve. I think this could be a really big trade deadline for the Dallas Stars. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. Next, we're going to New York Islanders. When it comes to the Islanders, Matt Larkin of the Daily Faceoff was talking about Brock Nelson, and he links 5 teams who could potentially have some major interest and are potential landing spots for Brock Nelson. 4 in the Central plus the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the 4 in the Central, the 4 teams who are in a playoff spot in the Central. He links Colorado, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Dallas, and Toronto all to Brock Nelson. Now, I know for Toronto, we've talked about this. They've been looking for a second, third line center, and it makes a whole bunch of sense where they would go after a guy like Brock Nelson who could fit that sort of a role. He's a really good goal scorer. He could really fit well on the second line with a guy like maybe Willie Nylander or Mitch Marner or Matthew Nyes. He could be a really good second line center there for the Maple Leafs, so I think that could be a really good fit. When it comes to the 4 Central teams, all these teams could definitely use another center. When it comes to Dallas, we just talked about this. Seguin's out. They need a second line center. Going after a guy like Brock Nelson would not be overly surprising. Like we said, they need a top 6 center, so adding a guy who can play second line center minutes would not be overly surprising. Like we just said, they have the draft picks and prospects to make that sort of a deal work. When it comes to Minnesota, they could definitely use a second line center. Nelson, I think, has connections to Minnesota, plus has a good relationship with GM Guerin in Minnesota, so it would make some sense. I know the Wild aren't the deepest of teams in the center market, so if they could get Nelson to be their second or third line center, that could be a really big boost there for the Wild. When it comes to the Avalanche and the Jets, they don't have as pressing of a need for a center as the Wild or the Stars or even the Leafs do, but they could definitely use one. We know the Jets last year acquired Sean Monahan, not at the trade deadline, but a couple of weeks before the trade deadline, from Montreal, and he fit really well as their second line center. So if they could go out and add a second line center at some point this year, would not be overly surprised for the Jets to do that, to try and sort of get what they had in Monahan back from last year. And I think Nelson could be a really good fit there in Winnipeg. When it comes to Colorado, not as big of a concern, but we know that Middlestead's not had an overly fantastic year this year. Colin's more of a third-line center. They probably want someone to play right behind Malkin, who can play really well as their second-line center. Maybe that's Brock Nelson. They don't have an overabundance of prospects, but I think they do have enough that they can make something work. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. But the Islanders have lost a couple of games recently. They're back down to, I think, 3 or 4 games below 500, and they're the team who's sort of starting to slip out of the race in the Eastern Conference playoff race, along with Buffalo. So if the Islanders lose a couple more games here, there's a very likely chance that they're going to be sellers at this year's trade deadline, and Nelson's going to be at the tippy top of the list of players that are very likely to get moved. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Minnesota Wild. When it comes to the Wild, Michael Russo of The Athletic was recently talking about Minnesota and said that the Wild are currently in a position to deal prospects and picks. He says that the Wild are currently at the point in their season where they're willing to trade prospects and picks to get upgrades for this year, plus maybe longer term, and they're open to moving that. We've seen that this year with them moving assets to try and acquire David Jiricek from Columbus. So we know that they're open to moving picks and prospects, but he says the one thing that's holding up the Minnesota Wild from making some bigger splashes is their cap situation. The Wild, I think, have this year, I'm not sure if this is the last year or if next year's the last year of their Parise Suter buyouts. But with all that dead cap right now, they don't have too much money to spend when it comes to adding assets at the trade deadline. So Russo says that while they are open to moving picks and prospects and making upgrades to this team, the cap is sort of holding them back. So we're probably going to see the Wild try and get some players, like we just talked about Brock Nelson, but they probably won't be able to acquire these players at full cap hits. They'll have to try and get them at like 50% or 25% of the original cap hit and try and have some other teams facilitate these deals to sort of get the cap a little bit lower. Or like Russo also mentions, they could try and look to move a couple of players that have some higher cap hits. He says that guys like Zuccarello, Hartman, Foligno would be interesting, but all have no movement clauses, so they would have to approve a trade. Lower end players like Gaudreau, who has a $2.1 million cap hit, or Johansson, who has a $2 million cap hit, are also potential options there to be moved, but sort of give them a little bit less depth on their forward group. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there. But we know that the Wild are in a very tight cap situation right now for this year, and maybe even next year too. I'm not exactly sure, but the Wild do have some really bad cap implications right now that's sort of holding them back from the deal. Like I said, I think if the Wild would really love to, they would add another top 4 defenseman and another top 6 forward, and maybe a couple more depth forwards, but they don't have the cap space to do so. So either they're gonna have to try and get some players on steals of deals with like retained money, or they're gonna have to try and move off some of the players they already have on their roster that do have some decently high cap hits. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there for the Wild, but they're going to be an interesting team to watch out for over the next couple of weeks leading up to the trade deadlines. Definitely. After your guys' thoughts on all of that, down in the comment section below is what I'm going to talk for today. What were your opinion on all that was discussed here today? Do you think the Wild will make an acquisition, and if so, what sort of player do you think they could acquire with the low amount of cap space they have? Do the Islanders move Brock Nelson, and could one of those 5 teams be a landing spot for Nelson? Love to get your thoughts on that. Do the Flames move Rasmus Andersson, or is he going to be a Flame for a long period of time? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, do the Dallas Stars wind up making a trade, and if so, could they try and go after a top 6 forward and a top 4 defenseman with Seguin's contract being placed on long-term injury reserve? Definitely have to get your thoughts on all of that. Plus the waiver updates, injury updates, and the trade from over the past couple of days. Definitely have to get your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. We're going to like this video. If you'd like to subscribe below, think I support right now to of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. So something else today's video. Also a blog to my news, rumors, analysis. If you have to check that out, there's a link down in the description below. And can't see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.